Oh, okay, you're almost there. You're one row removed. Believe it or not, this is the actual space where we have our school-wide, is this echoing or are you guys okay? Okay. This is where we have our school-wide meetings with all the faculty and staff, all the professors in this room. Can you imagine all of us crammed in this space? And then we have our, there's usually a TV over there, and the professors from Austria are virtually present. But in all the meetings, in all the years of having meetings in this space, this contraption was never used. And so I didn't even know this was here. This is my 6th year, and I didn't realize there was a built-in microphone in the space where we meet as a university. And admittedly, my colleagues in the education department like to sit in the last row. I don't know why. Teachers, look out, there's a new education. Why are we in the last row or close to the last row? So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and just, as much as I like to move around, I took the mask off when we were about to start for visibility, for access, and I'm also going to use this, but by habit, I do the wonders. So I feel like I have an invisible rope here, holding me here. So I apologize in advance if it fades in and out, if I turn or, I'm not leaning into the microphone. So anyways, that was a really amazing introduction. I think I need to record that or have it typed and hang it up for the bad days. Thank you so much. That was really sweet. So yeah, as you heard in the intro, I am a professor here in the education department. I am one of 2 special education professors. This is my 6th year here. And in my old life, I was a special education teacher with school-age children from newborns all the way up to age 21. And you might be thinking, well, actually, let me ask real quick, how many of you are non-education majors? Okay, so the few of you, the minority here, you might be thinking, 21? Oh my goodness. Special education services are provided up until the age of 21 because sometimes our students with severe, profound needs need to stay in school a little bit longer. And so legally, they're entitled to having a free and appropriate public education or PAPE. This is alphabet soup. Those of us in education, we love our acronyms and our abbreviations. So we are legally, and when I say we, I just mean the school system in general, right? So legally, we have to provide special education. So that's how, as a brand new teacher, 22 years old, I had a student who was 20 going on 21 who towered over me. Talk about intimidating, right? I'm a newbie, I'm wet behind the ears, and I'm supposed to know everything. You're not supposed to know everything, but you have the tools and the resources available to you through research, which I'll talk about in this presentation, but it won't be the boring, stuffy, fall asleep kind. I hope not. And you also have something else that I didn't have. I'm making myself sound really old. I'm really not. I just graduated 5 minutes ago. Yeah. So anyways, thank you. I feel my friend in the audience. Okay, so you guys actually have access to something that I did not have as much access to as a brand new professional out in the workforce. The internet was not anywhere near what it is nowadays. And even now amidst the pandemic, thank God we are here, you guys. Week 6, they said it couldn't be done, and here we are. I shouldn't be too cocky about that. But looking at the online learning, the on-campus versus off-campus students and even professors. Another reason why I was so excited about this particular invitation to come talk is because I'm actually physically in this classroom space with real live bodies, with students, because all 5 of my classes this semester are online. Because if I were to stop talking and shift gears and have you all engage in small group discussion, large group discussion, partner work, think, pair, share, report out what you're doing, I wouldn't have a clue as to what you're saying, right? So because with the mask being covering your faces, that's dramatically hindering my ability to A, communicate with you and understand what's being said, and B, more importantly, considering you're a college paying tuition, delivering to my fullest potential as the instructor. Okay, so I was super excited to be invited to come talk, not only to share some things I'm really super duper passionate about, but also to actually get out from behind the screen and interact in a classroom. And usually in a talk like this, I got all kinds of breakout group activities, and I even tie in the Trivial Pursuit. Some of you are in activities, games, rhythm, and drama. This is the game week. I have a game that goes with this research. And I usually bring it in for this talk, but unfortunately with social distancing, can't really do that. So the next best thing is for you guys to sit here and listen to me. So hopefully it will be interesting. Okay, so what do I do here? Like I said before, I'm a professor in the education department. You heard about some of my service through Student Serving Moms, Student Council for Exceptional Children, the Teachable Moments Peer Mentor Program, which is only for education majors, but who knows, maybe someday we might have a campus-wide peer mentor program related to your major. That's a little bit different from what we currently have. And yeah, my family is a huge part of why I do what I do and why I spend so much time here on campus and doing my work, because they drive what I do. Okay, so this is the flyer. How many of you have seen this flyer and that was part of the reason why you came? Awesome, that shows that the marketing is working, so keep it up. And there's food over here that's getting cold. Please help yourself at any point. Yes?
Is there anything gluten-free?
No.
What? What's the question?
Can you repeat that?
Is there anything gluten-free? And it is not.
Gluten-free options over there?
You have
I don't believe so.
allergy. That's the word.
I have cough drops up here. If you need something to hold you over. They're gluten-free, I know. Okay, that's the more important.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm really thankful for the timing because 1 week ago I came down with cold. It's just a cold, I promise. But I was so worried all week, like I'm not gonna have a voice and this and that. So that's another reason why I'm using this. But you might see me go to the other side of the desk and get my cough drops. Okay, moving on. We're still on slide number 1. Okay, so I kind of got ahead of myself. Who am I? Going way, way back. This is my twin brother. This is when we were, I think, about 4, and you can see us in our lovely matching twin outfits, classic 80s style. But you'll see something on my outfit that my brother does not have. We're sitting in a sit and spin. Did y'all have those sit and spins, or were they phased out by the time you guys reached your toppers? The sit and spin where you sit down, you spin yourself till you're dizzy, and then you fall off. Okay, yeah. So we're built in advantage of having a twin. We never fall off. That's the typical first, right? But there's something that's on my outfit that's not on my twin brother's outfit. Does anyone see what's down here on the left side? I mean, it was kind of hard to see because I got some of the lights on. But there's the red, see the bright red? It looks like stitching or maybe part of the cloth. It's actually red duct tape. And my parents were not trying to be forward, like fashion trendsetters, but basically that tape was holding together the cord that would come from the box down here, and it would come up to my hearing aid. I was such an active little kid. It was always falling out, and sit and spin, lots of forces against gravity. But here's the cool thing. When I was digging around in this podium trying to figure out how to set up this technology, which, can we just have a round of applause? I'm so proud. Everything's working so far. Yay. I'm a little bit rusty because pandemic. But when I was digging around in here, look what I found. This is here. I don't know, this is not my classroom, so I don't know why it's here, but my guess is there's a student who possibly needs a teacher to wear this, but this is very similar to what I had as a small child, not quite developmentally appropriate, to put a clunky, hardware. Nowadays, we have wireless options, all kinds of advances have been made in medical technology. But anyway, in that picture, here's the red tape in the clunky box, and then you can't see it, but the cord came over onto the right side, okay? So that was me a couple of years after diagnosis. As you can see in the picture, I am a twin. They say never to compare children, right? They say everyone develops at his or her own pace and all that. But my mom, who, by the way, was a special education teacher, even she did not realize, being trained in the field, even she did not realize that she had a daughter with hearing loss. This was before universal newborn hearing screenings, which are now mandated automatically. Babies are born, and the doctors will administer the test. So the diagnosis did not come until I was 2 years old. I had an older brother, a twin brother, and then soon a baby brother. But anyways, having siblings, maybe that's why I might have slipped through the cracks. I don't know. Who knows why things happen the way that they do. But it wasn't until the age of 4, around this time, when I started having all like the apparatus, the technology, all the things be added to the picture. I miss these puns. They don't quite translate as well in the online environment. Although I did put a meme up the other day. If you guys need an encouraging, uplifting meme, encourage Mint. There are so many Mint ones out there, especially around midterm season. Okay. So people know that we just had a midterm like class. So this middle picture is from when I was your age, when I was in your seats. During a summer, let me think, it was the summer before my junior year. I was studying deaf education, that's my undergrad, to be PC, politically correct, education of persons with hearing loss, but deaf ed. And so that's what I spent 4 years doing, 4.5 years. But this summer, you guys, this is my plug. I'm putting on my advisor hat, and some of you are my advisees, but this is my plug. Do whatever you can in your time away from campus, pandemic or no pandemic. You have more options now than ever before to get involved, no matter what your field is. There are electronic ways to get involved. Anyways, as an education major, studying special education, deaf ed, I chose to go, it was a hard decision. I went and I lived in the woods, where there was like a 3-mile lake, gorgeous. I was a camp counselor, and it was called mainstreaming at camp, what I was doing. So it was like a general education setting in the camp setting, and then I was one of the, I don't like the term, special ed camp counselors, the mainstreaming at camp counselors. So I and 2 others, our campers all had special needs. So you see this girl sitting on my lap, her name is Melanie, she was 15. She was having a rough time, and I didn't know this picture was being snapped, so it was kind of fun. It was before like the constant like selfie and like digital age we live in right now, right? So one of my co-counselors snapped a shot. Some of you may have taken or might be in EDU 321, which is the Inclusive Early Childhood Classroom. This is the picture that I have in my timeline for the class. And so far, we're 6 weeks in, nobody has emailed me and said, Dr. Reister, who's this girl who keeps showing up on Blackboard? And I'm waiting, like, why are people not asking about this? It's kind of an odd picture. I mean, not every professor posts, to my knowledge, no other professor posts pictures of 15-year-olds sitting on their laps. Hold on, there's the backstory. Melanie was having a rough day. I don't know if you can see since I'm all the way up here in front of the room, I'm telling you, normally I'll be all up and down. But I have multiple ear piercings. I had even more in college. So the one day at camp, I was too busy enjoying nature to put all the earrings in. We were running late. That was probably more realistic, the picture. I overslept and we were running late. Melanie was so beside herself because that was out of the routine. That was out of the norm. I always have the little earrings in. I mean, everything else was stripped away at camp. I had to have my accessories and my earrings, right? Were just important, right? So I didn't realize a seemingly minor small change would set her off, right? So she was so upset at like just not following the schedule and just like clingy and like needed attention all day long. And my colleagues and I were just kind of dumbfounded, like, what is going on with Melanie? This doesn't usually happen. Melanie, by the way, did not have hearing loss. She had autism. And that, I forgot to say that earlier, the mainstreaming at camp program was for campers with all kinds of physical and emotional and intellectual disabilities. So not just deafness or hearing loss. So anyhow, I have this picture because this was a light bulb moment for me. It was that evening right before dinner time, and it finally was like a light bulb moment, right? Like it finally dawned on me why she was so upset. And so I think take advantage of the opportunities that you can anytime you're away from school, because you guys are super busy during the semester, I get it. But in the summertime especially, if you can take on a job, a volunteering experience, an internship, such as being a camp counselor, I learned so much that summer in terms of behavior management, problem solving, co-teaching, camping, working with my colleagues in the camp setting. And I will forever remember Melanie and the importance of visual schedules, or if I make a change, announcing that and going through the transitions first to avoid a meltdown over earrings, okay? So that's like along the trajectory, after growing up with hearing loss, with various different kinds of technology to help me inside and outside school. I did go to school, fully mainstream in the general ed setting, had speech at, I don't know, first grade, second grade, around there. But the majority of my schooling, I did not go to school until I was 21. I graduated on time with my peers. And then in college, I just soaked up every opportunity I could to become the best teacher I could be. Okay, so this is me doing my early intervention. This little kiddo, he was 2 when he was brought into my life. Mom and dad had just received the unexpected diagnosis that their son had hearing loss, and so I worked with them in the community, in the daycare setting, in the preschool. I was fortunate. One of the things I absolutely adored about my job in my old life, and there are many things I love about this job, so don't worry, but in my old life, I had some of the same students, and I do, to an extent, I do here too, through advising for the ministry that I help oversee, but I worked with this kiddo from the age of 2 until middle school, until I walked away from that life to start this life. God's got strange travel directions, strange plans sometimes, and I kept saying, toward the end, oh, I really want to teach, I want to work with pre-service educators. Like, I just keep coming back to my experiences as a college student, and I would love, to be in that situation someday. And in my mind, it was going to be after a 40-year teaching career, I would have my little cane toddling around, working in a small school with my 40-some years of experience, but I made it, 9 years. And then I walked away from it. And I kept saying, well, when so-and-so gets to middle school, then I'll walk away. When so-and-so graduates, this was one of my so-and-sos, it was so hard to walk away from this family. Because through early intervention, you get to know the parents and the family so well, right? And he actually came for our wedding. So anyhow, this is a picture that was snapped during one of his home visits. And he is now a senior in high school. It's insane. I can't believe that the children get older, but I stay the same age. Speaking of children, this is one of my favorites in terms of who am I. So this is my now 4-year-old. This is another quick plug, students serving moms, virtual students serving moms this semester. My daughter, some of you are here, some of you are participating. My daughter, when she knows that one of her pals from Franciscan might be coming, she gazes out the window, kind of like this, there was no window here. I promise I was holding her. I got so much flack on social media for this picture. She was safe. I promise she was not dangling over the edge. But anyhow, this is one of my favorite roles, and this is, why I do what I do. And this was during the semester I was in Austria, and you can't just have one picture from Austria, so let's have a moment. Hopefully everything will get back to normal soon, and we can allow other students to have that opportunity to go there. So yeah, there's a little bit about me. And so basically, now that you know a little more about me and a little tiny bit of the personal and professional history, I do want to share that I would not be here. I would not be doing what I do. I would not be putting in the long hours. I would not be advocating. I wouldn't be doing any of that if it wasn't for my family. And if it wasn't for my first experiences at school. Some of my earliest memories, other than hearing things for the first time. So remember, I was 4. I was how old Charlotte is now when I got my first hearing aids. That would not happen now. I shouldn't give a blanket statement like that. That probably would not happen now because the diagnosis would come a lot earlier thanks to medical interventions, thanks to the technology, thanks to the knowledge, the field of the research, like pushing the field forward. But having said that, there are many different causes or reasons why hearing loss happens, right? So it can be through illness, like meningitis. It can be through a freak accident, right? In my instance, we think we know what happened, but we don't know for sure. But all that is like a whole other story for another night. But the diagnosis came at the age of 2. The hearing aids didn't come till the age of 4. So you're looking at, when you think back to early childhood, and I know we don't have all education people here, but looking at the rapid growth that happens from the newborn stage to let's say 5. Okay, let's count increments of 5. Think of all that happens in the first 5, and that's not even counting pregnancy and prenatal development. But the crawling, well not even crawling first, the maintaining eye gaze, paying attention to the environment, looking around, reacting to sounds, responding to sounds. Then let's think about the motor development, starting to hold the head up, and then starting this and not going in order. So those of you who have taken, the developmental, not going in order and skipping around. So anyways, I think I've made my point. Think of all that happened in those first 5 years. And I started at the age of 4, okay? And I'm not saying this like to my own horn or any of that stuff, not at all. You guys, those of you that are with me, I'm a big joker. So like, coming out, because again, I haven't been able to do this since last March or February. So anyways, I just have to give a shout out to my mom and my dad because I have these really cool childhood memories of hearing sounds for the first time, like the garage door opening, or like the click clack of the high heels, or the shoes on the linoleum floor. Baby brother is loud. He was a loud baby to start with, so it's not just with getting the amplification, but super loud screeching. I think it's all those sounds, right? And some other favorite memories are of my mom playing school with me, and I thought it was playing, I really did, but she was really providing early intervention. That's what she was doing. And then my dad, he would come home from work and he would review. So earlier I gave a shout out to the Pennsylvania girls in the back row. My mom is here in the back row, so can I just give my mom a round of applause? Thank you. All right. So this is a super duper long preamble into what's going to happen right now. So shifting gears, once I got out of working with school-aged children, it was such a hard decision, but turning away from that, looking at higher education and research to help, I saw some gaps in what was happening in the schools as a teacher, and I wanted to help add to the field and contribute to the field. And it's ironic because I'm here at a small school where we have a super duper awesome, amazing department, an education department. But there's no deaf ed, right? There's no speech therapy. There's no where I came from here. So that was why it was super duper exciting to come here as a special education teacher and think about what could be or what if. And so, already experiencing some changes that have come down the pipeline within the department and outside the department. So this research I'm going to share with you kind of marries the old with the new. So looking at the personal piece and tying it in professionally what I saw in the classroom, and then looking at what can we do differently. So the title of the talk is Perceptions of Identity in Individuals with Hearing Loss. Notice I'm not saying deafness, right? Or hard of hearing, or hearing impaired. Person with hearing loss. That's my personal favorite way to just describe it. It's objective, it is what it is. Hearing impaired, some people kind of associate that with like driving impaired, like something's wrong, which technically, yes, the medical view is there's a deficit. I'm not gonna, there's a deficit. I don't have 100% hearing. Deaf, big D deaf, lowercase d deaf, there are two completely different connotations or views when it comes to that one word that can be presented in two very different ways. So this research taps into that, and I'm only sharing this because I don't want to make assumptions, but considering we don't have a deaf ed program here, and we're not in an area where there's a huge deaf community in Steubenville, so I just want to kind of put that out there as like background info. So there were two research questions that drove this research, and they'll come up on the next slide or soon. Then I'm going to touch upon the 3 themes that came out of those 2 questions. You guys are thinking, wow, this is a super amazing research project. Only 5 themes, 2 questions, 3 findings. It was a process to get there. I will also touch very quickly upon limitations, because every single research study has limitations. And then implications for practice, because again, I know not everybody here is in education, but all of us are affected in some way, shape, or form by a special need or a disability, okay? It might not be deafness or hearing loss, but we just cannot get through life without either encountering somebody or maybe experiencing it ourselves, maybe a temporary loss of something, or, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a loss, it can be giftedness, right? Looking at advanced special needs versus, that's what I'm just going to leave it down to say, opposite of advanced. Okay, so further research. So I will spend time talking about what I've done and then what I hope will happen next. And who knows, maybe you guys might be the groundbreakers or might kind of take this to the next step. Okay, so I hope this will work. This is a 3-minute video where I basically summarize the entire content of tonight's talk. So with the microphone and the cords, I'm hoping everything will work, but bear with me. judge a book by its cover, only to find out after you get to know the characters, the setting, and the plot, that what you thought that book was about is different from what's on those pages. We all do it. We all make assumptions based on first impressions. We do it to others, and they do it to us. Everybody in this room can probably think of a time where the way they perceive themselves differ from how others viewed them. Are you deaf or hard of hearing? Which do you go by? This is the title of my study and was also a question that I was asked many years ago as a student. So I conducted a study where I talked with 10 different participants. We had in-depth interviews where I asked them questions about their identity and their hearing loss. 4 of my participants were students ages 12 to 17 who also had hearing loss, and the remaining 6 were their caregivers or parents, because research shows that caregivers play a crucial role in identity development in their children. So the results of my study showed that there's a continuum of identity types. Now these identity types have already been established in the literature in deafness, but my study found that 3 factors influence which identity type was selected: interaction with others, environment, setting, or context, and life experiences, both those in the past and what they currently face today. So as you can see, we have hearing, person with hearing loss, culturally deaf, medically deaf, hard of hearing, and others that are up there on the slide. For example, you could have a student in a quiet setting like a classroom where he could access that instruction and hear the teacher. He may select the hearing identity type, even though he has hearing loss and wears hearing aids. Yet that same student in a different setting, a noisy setting such as the cafeteria, during lunch where he may struggle to access communication among his peers, he may select a deaf or a hard of hearing identity type. So identity is fluid. It changes depending on these 3 factors: interaction with others, environment, setting, or context, and life experiences. Why does this matter? To be self-actualized individuals and to advocate for ourselves, we need to know how we define ourselves and convey that to others. Caregivers, parents, teachers, counselors, and other school professionals need to realize that the way they view their children may differ from how the children see themselves. This could also be applied to students in other populations: students with learning disabilities, students with autism, students from other cultural backgrounds, even different religions. You name it, we all have different backgrounds. But no matter who we're studying and looking at in terms of identity and how they perceive themselves compared to how others perceive them, we must realize people are people first, and to not judge a book by its cover. Thank you for your time. Wouldn't that be a really cool project to wrap up a semester's worth of work in 3 minutes or less? They call that the elevator speech. Every semester I toured the idea of making that be the final exam in one of my classes. Wouldn't that be cool, just to hear in 3 minutes or less what you learned? So, to be continued. Okay, so 2 research questions were the framework of the study. So, how does a student with special needs, in this case it was hearing loss, or disabilities, who was educated in the general ed setting, identify him or herself with respect to that special need? It's a wordy question, simply put. I was looking for how students would define themselves. I wanted to see that hearing loss would be front and center, or they would see other aspects or characteristics of themselves first. And then I posed the same question. If you remember in the video, in that visual, I had the 2 faces. It was like, which face do I show the world in the shape of a light bulb or understanding? But I also had parents and caregivers at the base of that light bulb. So I took that same question, and I asked the caregivers and the parents. A note I have to make in the interviews that I was able to conduct, 2 fathers did pull out. So that is one of the limitations, that I have 4 mothers' perspectives and only 2 fathers' perspectives. So that could be a really cool future direction to see what do fathers, what are their experiences, or what are their views in raising a child with special needs? Because the research showed there's a huge lack in hearing from fathers in that regard. Okay, so kind of got ahead of myself, but The reason why I wanted to look at students who are educated in the typical classroom setting or the general education setting, in other words, not sent to a special school, not sent to a special class in the town, like 3 towns over. I wanted to see, for those who were able to be educated in their neighborhood schools, in where they would have gone anyway if there had not been a special need, I wanted to see, because that means they're fully mainstream, they're fully out there experiencing everything school has to offer with their peers. And I also looked at students who had the hearing loss, but they used the spoken method of communicating, okay? They're not sign. So that right there will let you know what the population was, right? The demographics of the population. Okay, so within the research that, the research model that I used, phenomenological, I'll say that 3 times fast, that is the study, the research design that I used. And what happens when you use that particular design is you look at the data, and the data is revealed in essences. And then the essences are broken down in different themes. So that's where the findings of the study will come into play. So I have this up here just because it's a technical definition. What is an essence? It's kind of like a mysterious word. So it's described as the grasp of the very nature of the thing. It's the lived experience, right? So that's why I have these in-depth, individual one-on-one interviews with the students who participated, and then I have interviews with their caregivers, but they were separate. And that's really important to take note of, because, I don't know, you guys are away from home right now, but do you ever, like, especially after all this time that we spent at home, you know, this past spring, do you feel that you might act differently in front of your caregiver or your parent? Hey, Mom. Not really acting different right now, but, you know, I wanted to get the accurate, I didn't, it was like a no-rooms bar thing, right? Like I wanted to have the students and the caregivers to share honestly answers to the questions that I asked them. So I probably went down when I defended this research as the first person at my institution to use rainbows and color coding and whatnot in my presentations. Because up until now we've had black and white, but now we've got the color education majors. We love our stickers and our colors and our acronyms. So if you can think of a snack, the black and white Oreo cookie, I had those, I had refreshments in the meeting, and then the thing about the chips, so I think it's chips, right? The chocolate chip cookie with the M&Ms, okay? My point I was trying to make in going over these findings, the essence, the themes, the answers and the results to the questions, when looking at perceptions of identity, as we went into hearing loss, was that it's not black and white. Okay, this is why we're introducing color, all right? There are many different lived experiences. Okay, so even within the 4 families, the participant clusters, there was a lot of variability in the answers and the responses that I got, which was surprising because I went into this thinking that the families were all going to share the same label or answer. How do you find so-and-so? The medical facts don't lie, right? You heard me say in that 3-minute video that one of the findings was identity is fluid. The hearing loss, well, some hearing losses do change. That's a fluctuating hearing loss. Some of you might experience flucstating hearing loss when you have a cold, when your ears get blocked out, right? Or when you're traveling, right? So, but for the most part, the hearing loss is static in that it's not going away. I received my diagnosis at the age of 2. It's not going away. As much as I try to pray it away, it's still here. But it might get worse over time as I get older. That's a whole other kind of hearing loss. But within hearing loss itself, you got your mild hearing losses, moderate to severe, down. Those are the 4 main levels. You got capital D down, lowercase d down, okay? So within the participant cluster, there was a lot of variability, which was surprising. The variation depended upon some of those things I touched upon in the video, the interactions that the students have with others or the caregivers have with others, the different environments or settings or contexts. Right now, I'm doing really well. 1 minute, I'm controlling the conversation. It's not a good conversation, I'm talking at you. But 2, there's carpet in here to soak up any extra noise. The microphone, I know I would so appreciate this would be used in a space like this because it would send my voice, or whoever was listening, send the voice back there. But if you end up over at the field house, during a basketball game, echoey, loud, no carpet or soft fabric, well, no, they have the curtains in the back, but still, all of the echo, the reverberations. So depending on the environment, the setting, it could change within a day. It could change multiple times within a day how I might define myself as an individual with hearing loss, even though that hearing loss is the same, right? Sometimes the battery might go dead. One time at camp, this really happened. This is what I learned the hard way as a teenager, even though I've been wearing the hearing aids since I was 4. As a teenager, away at camp, the batteries went dead and I didn't have them in my pocket, and I asked my cheer coach, can I go back to the cabin? My batteries went dead. And she thought I was trying to get out of the exercises or whatever and wouldn't let me go. So then I had to perform in the front row. This is non-accommodating, right, when you hear these things. This brand new cheer that I had just learned, and I was just 3 seconds delayed, and I'm in the front row, and I'm like, do again. And so that is one of 4 times that I can count when someone said, oh, she's deaf. Remember, I went to I was mainstream, so to me that was a foreign concept, because in my mind, deaf was Scranton School for the Deaf. That was the closest residential school for the deaf, big D deaf, right? They use sign language, they didn't communicate by spoken language like me. They may not have hearing aids or they might have hearing aids, but they were a different group. And that's what I found in the research, because these students were mainstreamed, okay? So depending on their interactions with others, like cheer coaches, well, in this case, baseball in the research, because they were boys, looking at how people had treated them, whether with respect or with a lack of respect, influenced how they defined themselves, and then different individual meanings that they attributed to what it meant to be hard of hearing, or what it meant to be, in their words, what it meant to be as a person without hearing loss is what I would prefer. Let's use person first language instead of just saying they're normal, because that means that I'm not normal. I'm probably not, but anyways, different perceptions existed often within the same individual I was interviewing. It was fascinating. I just have to say, I'm kind of peppering this with personal experiences interwoven. But the research design that I use, that phenomenological research design, it accounted for that, through the coding and through the outside, the inter-rater reliability and all that. So I just want to put that out there so you guys don't think I'm just venting and sharing all my deep life stories here. Okay, symbolic interaction theory is one of the ways that helped me to kind of take a step back and be objective, right? This is not my story, this is the story of the students I interviewed. Okay, so looking at identities, the role of advocate, which that word came up in my intro, but looking at advocating for, on the caregiver's end, for their children's rights, for what helps their children be successful, whether it's on the ball field or in the classroom. And then also the students acting as advocates and explaining, if they choose to explain, or do they choose to just kind of let it slide. And then along the other side of that coin, acting as an advocate then allowed them or made them think that that was part of their job, that that was their role or their responsibility. And I am all for self-advocating. I am all for figuring out what makes you tick, whether it's when to study for a midterm or how to manage your time to go to 2 talks in one night, or whatever it is. I'm all for advocating and self-advocating, right? But when will we let the children be children? Right? Especially when it's something that's beyond their control. Or what's the right age as somebody working with children? When do we even start the conversation about, well, when are you going to let people know that they need to repeat themselves? Or in this mask age that we're living in amidst the virus, So it would be really interesting to conduct these interviews now or after this passes and see how the views of identity might change. Okay, interactions. So this was really interesting. Many of the students, it was more so on the children's end versus the parents' end, they were using that normal, or in the way it was defined in the study as somebody without hearing loss. They were using that as kind of a benchmark, how close can my child pass as fitting in with the majority of society as somebody without hearing loss. Or the child was thinking that, how well can I fit in with my peers who don't have hearing loss? So they were looking at it from the lens of a hearing person. Okay, so these are the connections they made between themselves and what was going on in their world. And then, like I said before, the different environments or the different settings or the different experiences they had often led to different identities. So it's almost like a segmented, fractured kind of view, right? Instead of that holistic view, we hear a lot about, pursuing holiness, and that's when we have our whole, like W-H-O-L-E, to lead us to holy, H-O-L-Y-ness, with the I and kiss, okay? So it's so funny, when I watched that video, I was at a public institution, and that tail end, different religions, I'm like, that was a foreshadowing of coming here. Okay, so the first essence, I think I neglected the title, the first essence, to say it out loud, but it was self-determined identity type. So looking at that top, the blue band of the rainbow, right? So self-determined, it was up to those individuals I interviewed to define that particular person's identity type, okay? And so their self-image came from how well, or maybe not so well, they perceive themselves as falling into a certain group, feeling that sense of belonging. This goes back to not only symbolic interaction theory, but also social identity theory. Okay, so here's a quote out of that self-determined identity. This is from a mother. She views her son as a person with hearing loss, but she was very clear to say, that is not how I'm describing him, but I'm describing the hearing. Now, I should note that Jessica was a school psychologist, so she was coming from that background. I don't know if maybe a waitress would have said the same thing, who knows? That could be another future direction, right? Okay, moving down that rainbow, looking at the yellow. The second essence is fluidity. Okay, so I want to be clear that, okay, so there. I want to be clear. Is this door open? Okay, it sounds different now. But see, look at that. Imagine that. The door makes such a difference. Okay, so it's not actually, that's nice. Okay, I feel like the battery, like the hearing moment of my hearing, it just went down. There is that. Okay, so identity is not static. It's fluid. The hearing loss is still there, but that was actually a perfect example. Like looking at the environment and how it affects, how you put yourself out there, portray yourself. Okay, so what was really interesting was in the participant clusters, the students, the children, they had multiple identity types versus the parents latched on to one, maybe two. I don't know why that is. Is that because they see maybe the bigger picture? Is it because they remember what it was like pre-diagnosis? Is it because they're the ones paying the medical bills? They're the ones buying the batteries? They're the ones who are going to bat for their children behind the scenes? They're the ones who are in servicing the teachers and letting them know, the coaches, what their children might need? I don't know. There are so many different directions that can go into. Okay, so interaction with others, here are some examples. I kind of mentioned some of them up until this point, but these are the different interactions that were listed in the research. And then other personality attributes. I really enjoyed seeing this come out in the research. In looking at the different pieces of the pie or slices of the pie that make up that individual. Do y'all know Trivial Pursuit, the game, right? So I mentioned at the beginning of this that I have these really cool embedded activities, and this is like a perfect size group too, so. Darn COVID, it needs to go away. But anyways, part of the activities was where I would bring in the Trivial Pursuit pie piece, and I would just talk about, in the research, how they talked about, okay, I'm a hard worker, I'm a baseball player, I'm a big brother, I'm kind, oh, I have hearing loss. So like all those different pieces of the pie would form that holistic view of the student. And so it was really neat to see that be so prevalent in the interviews, especially on the children's side of things. Okay, so here's a quote out of that sense of fluidity. It changes. So the impact, some parent, the impact of his hearing loss is going to vary or change on a daily basis, depending on these factors, with whom he is interacting, the environment, the setting, and the noise levels. I don't think it has to really belabor the point that has already come up throughout up until this point. Okay, moving down that rainbow. Now we're at the third and final essence. So first we have self-determined identity type. Then we have that fluidity, that self-determined identity type might change depending on the setting of the scenario. And then the last one is management and resiliency. What are you going to do? It's one thing to define yourself the way you do. It's one thing to even accept that it might change depending on circumstances. Well, what are you going to do if no matter how many times you explain to somebody, that person still has this perception or this view of how that person is defining you? That's a loaded question, especially since the presidential debates are happening soon, so I know I forgot this up. But that is a loaded question. Looking at our background, looking at our religion, looking at our faith, looking at all that. How do you manage? How are you resilient? How do you bounce back? What do you even? Do you just kind of like throw in the towel and say, I'm not talking to you, because no matter what, I mean, in some circumstances you might need to do that, take a breather, take a step away. But in this context, what was interesting was the theme of adjustment emerged in the caregivers and the parents in terms of ways that they managed and they helped their children to be resilient was through what they have to do behind the scenes, right? The hearing aid maintenance for those who were hearing aids, scheduling so many different medical appointments. Another favorite memory I have from high school in particular was the days that my dad would take off work and come pick me up and take me to the ear doctor and we just go to McDonald's or something, like on the way back. So I wasn't able to skip school, but I could like sneak out for a bit. And so dad was like the medical person, mom was the educator person, right? And they have those different roles, okay? Tapping into family development, you've got like different levels, the family life cycle, the different roles. And so that's a whole other, that could be another area to study too, another area of research. Purchasing of equipment, purchasing of the apparatus, the technology, investigating, researching, trying to keep up with the speed of light, all these rapid changes that are happening thanks to this digital age and the research that's being done. Ensuring that accommodations are in place. Quick story, goodness. How many of you, when you were in, this is middle school, 8th grade, maybe even high school, how many of you had to take swimming for gym class? Did y'all have a pool in your high school or in your middle school? Nobody? Oh, okay, so we did. And there was first of all, what middle schooler, I shouldn't make assumptions, but I know I, as a middle school girl, did not want to put my swimsuit on. No offense to the one male in the room at this point, because Phil left. But that's the wrong thing I want to do. Anyways, I was told, so the hearing aids, if you're not familiar, the hearing aids have to come out. They can't get wet, okay? And I also wear glasses, and I didn't have contacts all the time. So I was like, I can't see you, and I can't hear you, but I'm going to get in this pool anyway. And because remember, it was a fully mainstream situation. I didn't have an IEP, I didn't have an individualized education plan or any kind of special education paperwork that would provide me with accommodations or modifications. And that was my choice because I was going to make it on my own and do what I had to do. But I also had, we were advocates. So there was one time that there was an arrangement that was made that I would have a swim buddy. And I'm not the strongest swimmer, but I was proud of my efforts. I'm putting my head in the water every now and then. I'm not sinking. I'm floating my way across the pool as we're doing our laps. And did I share this in our class? I don't remember. Okay. So one time we're in the middle of the laps and I try to get a cup. I'm swimming, I'm minding my own business, probably flailing, like flapping in the water, not very graceful. And I get to the other side and there's not a single soul in the pool. There's no one around. Like the whole class has disappeared. And I look around, remember, limited vision. I look around and like it's all blurry, and I noticed the outside door to the pool, the pool area was open. There was a fire drill, but I didn't know it because I'm not so gracefully trying to swim my way across and complete my lap. The gym teacher didn't make sure that everybody was out because she said that was your swim buddy's job. Well, they thought it was a fire, so they ran. It was still very irresponsible teaching on that end, but I can say it now, like, with a smile on my face, but that was traumatic, you guys. Like, so embarrassing. That gym teacher came back in, she screamed and yelled, and here's the thing. She said she forgot because I coped so well. I just heard those phrases this summer when I had to go to bat in moving to the online format because I can't teach with the mask. Oh, we forgot because you do so well. It's like a backhanded compliment. Like, great, I'm glad I do so well, but it's a special need. I need an accommodation. So, ensuring accommodations are in place at school. I never had a take swimming after that. I'm just fused after that. I had to do a report and like write about fencing or tennis or something. But anyways, hopefully these stories are moving forward, in between, in that with the growth in special education and more advocates graduating from awesome education programs and even non-education, informing yourself, growing in your own professional development to learn more about interactions with others, right? Okay. Insurance and medical companies, that was another issue. Okay. So the theme out of that management resiliency piece, what emerged was that we must persevere. And I say we because this is good advice for everybody, right? Regardless of special need. We must persevere and not give up when working to ensure accommodations for whatever you need. For whatever it is. Sitting closer to the front, talking on the microphone, asking to leave early so you can go to another talk, right? Looking for accommodations. We must never give up, no matter how many doors get slammed or how much opposition. And what special education has going for it is it's a legal requirement. Schools, administrators, teachers, they must provide these resources. If they can't, then they have to find another school nearby, hopefully nearby, that can provide those resources. Okay, so the resiliency, the way it kind of manifested in the study, the way it kind of appeared, was that the caregivers, the parents, the students, they would continue to explain about the hearing loss in spite of those hurdles or obstacles or challenges. And all that comes with it. It's so much more than just having difficulty hearing. I mean, there are social, emotional, academic ramifications so much. And hopefully, just this brief talk, hopefully thinking about, self-determined identity type. So the way I might want to label that person might not quite match up. And it could change. And oh goodness, there's a whole backstory to this about managing and being resilient and overcoming. Hopefully that helps you at least just consider that there's a whole other side to it. There's a whole other piece, right, of those two pieces to that experience. And then also, please don't, not extrapolate, but please don't think, this person's hearing loss, this is my experience with that person, so therefore this person is going to have the same experience. It's all different, right? Okay, so I think I kind of already spoke about the advocacy piece too. That kept coming up, so that's kind of in both under fluidity and then also under the red rainbow color. Okay, I think I only have 2 quotes out of this one. So this one is from another mother. His classroom teacher from when he was 3 gave me a poem. This student was a freshman. Okay, so she's remembering all the way back to when he was 3. She was a teacher of the deaf and in charge of the hearing impaired classroom. So real quick, she's not being non-politically correct here. The government, and they get funding and members legally required to provide services, some of those labels haven't caught up. So they might not necessarily use person first language, like I said a moment ago, person with hearing loss is what I prefer. But many of my students were serviced in the hearing impaired support program. It was just the name, the government name hadn't changed, right? So we were kind of it was like grassroots, we're trying to change the culture, the vibe, and change the meaning there. But anyway, she said the teacher of the deaf in charge of the hearing impaired classroom, something that she had said from when he was 3, he had so many challenges back then. She gave me a poem that basically said things are going to be difficult, but at the end of the poem, as the mom recalled, it said, and God gave him to you. Again, this was not a religious, it was awesome to see this emerge. God gave him to you. God knew he needed somebody really strong to be Devin's mother. Well, I'm probably one of the strongest women I know, she said. What I've been through, my friends would never have made it. But I got them, and it's going to be a challenge, but you know what? I'm a girl that's up for the challenge. And it was like, there you go, girl. Yeah, this is so hard, subjective when you're hearing these things, especially when there's a personal connection. See, research can be fun. You really should try it, you should do it. So anyways, it was really cool, hearing her talk about not only the impact of seeing how strong she was as a mother, as a woman, to be able to, go through this lived experience, but to see the impact that preschool teacher had on her so many years ago. Early intervention is key. Okay, here's another quote. This is from the 5th grader, Danny. Okay, he said, in terms of management and resiliency, when it comes to hearing loss, just deal with it, and then try to be the president. Oh, that's timely. Try to be the president of your class. Try out the band, do sports. It doesn't matter what you do, but just try and move on so you don't get stuck and not see where you can go. I so hope he hung on to that as a 5th grader. I hope he is still of that mindset. Okay, so here are the 4 families. And remember I had said that 2 of the families, the fathers ended up not participating. So you'll see all 4 mothers, but only 2 fathers. And basically, you'll see in the center, the bitter bubble, or raindrop, rainbows, sun, clouds. You'll see the boys, the students are in the center, and how they define themselves. And then the caregiver defined the student in the same way. The bubble, the raindrops overlap. Okay, but if there was a little bit of a disconnect, then they're separate. So you can see by looking at the Sand family, the father agreed. Now, I should say that the parents and the student did not know what the other has selected. It was almost like a game, like trying to figure out, like, oh, who's gonna pick the same one, like a newlywed game, like answering the same question, the question the same way. And so what's interesting, I really wish the other 2 fathers would have participated, because look at where the fathers are. They overlap with their sons. What does that mean? There's so much. This is the beauty of research. You find one thing and then you go down another rabbit hole. It's like it's never ending. And then the mothers, the 2 families in the center, they did overlap, but the other 2 had different ones. Now, I want to highlight that Shannon, the one who talks about the impact of the preschool teacher, Shannon at first did agree by saying hard of hearing, but then she kind of like went back and changed her answer as we progressed through the interview, and other memories or other, the way she answered the question kind of affected her original response. So that was interesting. If I were to go back and interview a 3rd time, I would bring that back up and ask why the change, what was the reason for that. Okay, so this is the slide that you saw in the video. So hopefully it's abundantly clear in this abbreviated, this is just like an all-day thing, so it's really quick to go through this. In this abbreviated presentation, hopefully it's abundantly clear the whole analogy of which face do I show the world, which identity type do I choose for myself in this moment based on the interaction with others, the setting or the context, and the life experiences. So for instance, the cheerleading camp fiasco, trying to cheer with hearing aids that weren't working, and then the swimming fire drill issue, that definitely affected the rest of my schooling and how it was almost, not that I had to be pessimistic, but I had to think about what might happen that would affect my ability. So you better believe after that summer when I was stuck without the batteries in my pocket, I always have hearing aid batteries on me. In my cup holder, in my office, in the drawers, in my school bag, I have hearing aids everywhere, tucked everywhere. But not now, because right before I went to Austria, I got brand new hearing aids. That was scary, you guys, to leave the country for how many months and not have my audiologist. I've been staying with the audiologist I'm supposed to be. She can never retire. So anyway, and I was still in London. I go back home to Pennsylvania and see my senior doctor and see my audiologist. So anyways, I did get brand new hearing aids, and you guys, they have rechargeable hearing aid batteries. I saved so much money. I miss CVS. I used to go to CVS all the time with those batteries, but no more. So I don't have the batteries on me right now. Because I have the new and improved rechargeable, who knows a thing? I mean, rechargeable hearing aids? What? Okay, so anyways, 4 students from the ages of 12 to 17 participated. And like I said, I would love to dive deeper and talk to more of the fathers and get their perspectives. Okay, so what does this mean? Again, look at those 3 different types. Self-determined, or 3 different S's. The self-determined identity type. So I, putting this into practice, would say I'm a person with hearing loss first and foremost. Okay, I don't hide it. I don't necessarily, I think I do tell my students on the first day what I have, when we do like a getting to know you, I have them fill out anything I should know, like other than like the email, name, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? No pressure. But I also say at the bottom, is there anything I should know? And then I say, for example, if I were doing this, I would say, hey class, I have hearing aids. So it's like it's all how you approach it, like what you do, right? And then my students did learn, the ones who are new for me this year, they did learn through that very first video that I sent out in my online classes, and I think I have that embedded in here. So how would I define myself? Person with hearing loss, okay? And then I think nowadays, maybe I'm just getting told, I feel like it doesn't really change as much. Like I'm always gonna say person with hearing loss, even if I don't have to repeat, I don't have to ask you to repeat yourself, or I can hear everything, I'm still going to say I'm a person with hearing loss. And then that management resiliency I kind of previewed a moment ago, it was quite a challenge. And I have to say it was disheartening first time as a professional in the working force to have to ask for an accommodation and to have so much pushback. But I am now currently teaching online. But I do have to say, I gave midterms in a couple of my classes the other day, and I do have an extra credit question in there where I say, what's anything, a random trivia item about your professor. And remember, this is online, right? 5 classes online. And out of 20 students, only 1 said, oh, my professor has hearing loss. And I was just floored that not more than 20, usually you get like 5 or 6. So I don't know if that's because they're not interacting with me offline. It's interesting. It would be a really cool experiment. So anyways, limitations that existed. With this type of research, when you're looking at qualitative data, whoever is analyzing that data comes away with his or her takeaways, right? It's interpretive in nature, especially when you have somebody who has lived and breathed it, right? So someone else could pick up those same transcripts and pull out all these different themes and maybe have 5 essences or 3, or maybe might define advocacy as something else instead of the way I defined it, right? So that's just the disclaimer. It's qualitative data. That's nothing new. Depending on who is interpreting that, there may be a different interpretation. Small sample size. I only had 4 families participate. And then, like I mentioned before, 2 out of 4 fathers chose to participate. What does this mean in the future? So I would love to replicate this and expand those participant clusters, moving away from just the students and the caregivers, but also bring in the teachers, bring in guidance counselors, bring in the peers. That is sensitive, right? Like, especially at 5th grade, like, hey, little Johnny, come on over here and tell me what it's like being done with Danny. You know, like, it's tricky. So it's been a couple of years since I did this, but I haven't actually followed up on this just yet, because I don't know what it might look like. And I also don't want to remember interaction with others, the setting or the context or the environment, and those lived experiences. I don't want someone to look at Danny in a different light because of a question that I asked, right? I don't want Danny to have a poor experience. So someday I hope to be able to expand, or for someone else too, but I don't know what that looks like just yet. But why? Why take the time? Why bother? Because bottom line is we're trying to increase self-advocacy and lower or decrease learned helplessness. I had students, when I taught school-age students, who would choose to sit in the back because no matter what I do, I'm not going to be able to hear the teacher. The teacher mumbles. The teacher has a beard, has a mustache. The teacher covers the mouth. You know, I'm just checked out. I can't hear anyway, so I have to sit in the back and goof off. That would be like learned helpless. So they're not even trying to apply, like not even trying to accommodate for yourself or advocate for yourself. So that's another project. That's something else we have to speak to you about someday. Okay, further research. All the participants, the students were males, so I would love to interview the females. Again, I have up there, let's talk to the younger students, but they haven't had as many lived experiences. Remember the sit and spin picture of my brother at the age of 4? I didn't have the cheerleading camp or the swimming pool fire drill experience until middle school and high school. Okay, so how I would have answered those questions as a 3rd grader, a 4th grader, a 5th grader would probably be different. And that could be a really cool longitudinal study to kind of compare like over different points in life, or when pandemics occur, like looking at before and after, see what happens. All the participants were Caucasian, so I would love to experiment and talk with people from other backgrounds. And then, as I mentioned before, those other 2 bullets I touched upon. All the families who participated were living in the same household. There were any divorces or remarried. They were all the biological parents of the children. Okay, so if you have somebody who lives in multiple homes, or has caregivers who are living apart from each other, I don't know. I wonder if you might have more separation or maybe even more overlapping in those clusters. Who knows? And then looking at going deeper into that social identity model and looking at that fragmented, segmented view, like, okay, in this scenario with this person, I picked this label, but in this circumstance, I picked this label. Is that really truly an integrated view of self? That's not even going in the religion direction, but just looking at that segmented piece. So it'd be interesting to go deeper and have follow-up interviews and ask more questions. And then also, I'd love to revisit these same boys 10 years, 20 years, 15 years down the line and ask them the same questions because they would have had more lived experiences. Okay, so like I said, I would have asked you about the quiz you, but I went too fast. So 3 essences, there they are, kind of in line with the rainbow. So I'm going to go ahead and play for you what the end result was of the accommodation of asking to move online. I don't recommend taking 5 classes and teaching online simultaneously, but it is what it is, given the circumstances. So this was my intro video that I put in Blackboard, and for many of my students, it was the big announcement that, oh dear, we are an online class, not a hybrid class, not an on-the-ground class. So this is a real-world example of how I had to advocate and explain a change.
Hello, my name is Dr. Megan Reister, for those of you I have not had the privilege of working with just yet. This video announcement will serve as a brief introduction to expectations for this semester out of our shared course. First off, our course is going to be an online course. The reason being is COVID-19. And I, as a person with hearing loss, who wears hearing aids in both ears, am not able to carry out my teaching or my classes when students are required to cover their faces and block access to communication. So, as a result, my courses will be online for fall 2020. The announcement is letting you know about the setup of our course in Blackboard. Feel free to poke around, click.
I guess stop there, because then again, like the technical aspect. Again, the technical aspect of Blackboard. But the reason I show that is because if you think back on role of informant under the management resiliency piece, if you think back on the importance of advocating, whether for yourself or for others or for those who are in your, in your care and whatever your future profession might be, and especially given the current climate, we live in a society where it's me, I, like whatever it takes to get up to the top or like go up the ladder. We have to remember where we are. Like, okay, I'm hoping I'm preaching the choir, but thinking about it's not about taking others down to be ahead, but taking the time to just slow down, consider another perspective, consider a different experience. You will never hear me say, oh, I know what it's like to be in your shoes, even if I know that you have hearing aids in both ears. You will never hear me say, oh yeah, I've been there. I know what it's like trying to communicate in that noisy environment, because my lived experience is not yours, right? And take the hearing loss out of it. You could be from the best state ever. I'm trying to think of your home states, and it's not PA, but we will just agree to disagree on that one. But, we have to be mindful of those differences and experiences and perceptions. But this research was done before identity research became what it is now. So I have to admit that when all that started blowing up, you can be whatever you want to be, I had a little bit of a panic moment. I thought, oh my gosh. First of all, a lot of the research that's out there is under my maiden name, but, I have it up there, those 3 articles up there for your reference. So I thought, okay, well, if anyone's going to cite my research and try to say, because remember, self-determined identity, it's fluid. And how do you manage? How are you resilient when others don't see you the way you see yourself? I was like, what have I done when all this started happening in our secular society right now? So admittedly, I did not actively promote my research. It's nothing I'm ashamed of. I'm super proud of it. But I don't, it's not my baby, Charlotte's my baby, and my 2 puppies, but I want to protect that. That's sacred. Those families sat down with me and shared some of those struggles and challenges and trusted me with that information. And I don't want to see that I don't want to say dragged in the mud, but I don't want to see that be twisted or changed and be applied toward another agenda, toward another, agenda. I'll just leave it at that. So that was yet another reason. It scared me to be asked to talk about this, because that's one of the reasons why I haven't been front and center with it. But then after prayer, and I thought, wait a second, I shouldn't be hiding it. I should be standing up for the truth and speaking it out loud, saying it for what it is. Because, I can't control what other people are going to do with my hard work, right? With my word, with my writing. But I can control what I put out there in terms of my research and what I share at events like this. So I felt like I had to kind of put that as like a little asterisk, like after the research, because please hear me loud and clear. I am not saying when I say identity is self-determined per the findings of this. I am not saying that means we can just walk out of here and I'm going to be a purple dandelion tomorrow. No. So all this is from the lens, which is kind of weird. I don't know why I thought that. That's another analysis area. So anyways, I just be mindful of different perceptions. And especially if you're going to be working with children and whatever your future occupations are, be respectful and mindful, even if you disagree, even if it's a fundamental, like huge, philosophical, religious, whatever difference, be respectful. Because we're all human at the end of the day, right? So the reason why I'm kind of harping on this is because one of my other areas is counseling. So my CogNate at the PhD level was in counseling because of all the issues I saw working with my school-age children at all ages, and then also the issues I saw in the family dynamics and the roles and all that. And so this is one of my all-time favorite quotes from that other area that I also dive into, like play therapy and counseling and all that. But especially in working with young children, well, actually any age, but really take the children piece out of it, working with others, no matter what your future professions might be. What you think of me, I'm going to think of me. Okay, and I see that all the time with 4-year-old. Like some of the things that I might just say, like about thinking, and oh, she took that literally, or she's internalizing that. So what you think of me, I will think of me. What I think of me, I will be. Okay? Maybe that can be your new mantra, especially as midterm season rolled around. You're like, it's like, I think I can. I'm gonna do well, I'm gonna get through this. We're gonna make it to week 15 here on the ground. We're almost halfway there. So what you think of me, I will think of me. What I think of me, I will be. Okay? So we got, I think, like 8 more minutes. Does anyone have any questions? And if you do, I'm gonna stay back here, but I do ask that you lower the mask so I can see what you're saying.
So you were diagnosed at age 2,
Mm-hmm.
you said, but you didn't receive hearing aids until age 4. Was that because, was that an issue with advocacy, or did they not realize the severity? I have to mention they would, but why the gap of 2 years?
Yeah. So the question was, you have a hearing loss diagnosis at the age of 2, but you didn't receive your technology, your apparatus, your hearing aids until the age of 4. Why is that? In my limited recollection, I'm glad my mom's here because she can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's because at that point in time, the thought was we had to wait till the ears are a little bit bigger, and then because it's an expensive process, like making the molds, getting the hearing aids, getting used to them. The first day I had hearing aids at the ripe old age of 4. After all that, going through the visits with the ear doctor, the audiologist, getting home in one piece, they came out and were thrown on the kitchen floor by someone, I don't know who. And I think they didn't break though, right? Did they actually break? No, but your heart probably stopped for a moment because it was like, because they're expensive. They are. And also, I have to say, this isn't just when you're a child. My 3rd year of teaching, so I was like 24. I mean, old enough to know better, right? I took the hearing aid out at night, because not only do you not wear them when you're swimming, but you also don't wear them at night. And I put them on the bedside stand, they were probably as high as this table. And my puppy dog got into them, and the next morning, it was so weird, because I had just been home that weekend for a wedding, so like, if this was going to happen, it would be really convenient, because remember, I go to this audiologist. So at that point in time, I was an hour and a half away from home. I had just returned late Sunday night from a fun weekend celebrating a wedding, go to bed, get up for my new week of school as a teacher. Monday morning, like, boy, the hearing aids, they're not here. They were, and I have a picture somewhere. I used to show up my classes, but I don't think I have recently. They were in 13 little smithereens, little pieces, because my dog ate my hearing aids. Yeah, and then there was another time in high school when I had my curling iron on, because this is not natural notice, but I had the curling iron on, and the hearing aids were on the vanity, and I put the curling iron down just a smidge too close. I know. I mean, some of these things they're expensive mistakes, but that's going off the subject. But back then, I think the belief, the mindset was, let's wait, first of all, for maturity. Oh no, I just proved myself immature with the adult examples of breaking my hearing aids. But I did make it. I got lost without breaking them. That was one of my concerns. Like, what's going to happen when I'm lost? I had like 4 pairs. I had like backup pair, like old ones that didn't work, all the batteries, because, being out of the country for so long. So, at that point in time, they may not have them for 2-year-olds. Because remember, this was before universal newborn hearing screenings were required. Nowadays, newborns can be fitted, but they wouldn't stay on. They would have them, but the ear is growing and changing, even though it doesn't look like it. Like, you look at a baby and you don't say, oh, look big ears you have. But looking at, so I would say nowadays you probably wouldn't have a 2-year gap. Plus, back then, I'm going to date myself, the field of special education is not that old. I think it's okay to say this. My mom was one of the first special education teachers. Okay, so that's one generation removed from the birth of special education as we know it today. Okay, and so what we know about the importance of early intervention, the importance of not reading. We should be reading to our children while they're still in the womb. We should be talking to them. As soon as they come out, just exposing them to the environmental print, the language-rich society, all that. And back then, that wasn't the focus. What's really cool, that sit and spin picture back in that era, Mom was basically doing online learning, but without a computer. She was writing to the John Tracy Clinic out in California, I don't know if you have anybody from the San Diego area, and they would send the curriculum, the materials, to Delaware, Ohio, I forget where we were at the time. Ohio, okay, yeah, the first time I was here. So they would send the curriculum, and then you would record me, right? Like little video cassette tapes. Yeah, so, and then she would send the language samples back, and so it was basically like professional development, old school, that online learning, but before it was, online. So, yeah.
I can imagine that, like, hearing sounds that you never heard before,
Yeah.
that caused you a lot of anxiety.
Oh, exactly. It's exciting. I don't remember being anxious. I remember being curious. What's that? Mom could answer this better. I wasn't like up all night, like, I don't know what these sounds are, Would you say that I was anxious when I heard these new sounds, or was I like more inquisitive, curious?
More inquisitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bored to be a researcher.
Garage door.
Yeah.
She'd say, did you hear that? I was like, what? Because I was so used to hearing these things.
Yeah.
The sound of your shoes on the hard surface floor.
The way that manifests itself now as somebody who's been wearing them for how many years? Am I? 3 decades now. Now, the way it manifests itself is when I switch to a new pair of hearing aids, because you get accustomed to how it sounds. It's kind of like, when you go to a concert and your ears get blocked and it's so noisy, and like you're used to it being subdued, or like, and then all of a sudden, like, no, that's like your ears pop or whatever. So you get accustomed to the current hearing aid that you're wearing, and then from my experience, when they switch, it's very subtle. I hear it in the car. Like, I'm like, whoa, that song has all these underlying, it's almost like the little strings in a rope. Like, I don't hear all those strands with the old hearing aids, but with the new hearing aids now, there's a whole other, like, I'm not a musical person, so I don't know if it's the tempo, the bass, I don't know what the term is, but I'm like, music is like so multi-talented, like all these different instruments blending together. Like, maybe thinking of it as I can hear those instruments like pulled apart in the song, you know, but like my old hearing aids, it would be more blended. I don't know, it's kind of a hard analogy to make, but real quick, I just want to say on the subject of analogies, some people think when you put the hearing aids in, it brings the hearing levels up to 100%, like typical hearing. Not necessarily. Think of it when you're in the car. Again, I spent a lot of time driving. So you're in the car, you're listening to a radio station. Do we even still do that, or are we all like podcast it out? Like, do we even listen to music on the radio anymore? Okay. So you know how you drive out in the area and it's all staticky, but you turn the volume up. It's not going to make that song clearer. It's just going to turn everything up. The bit that you hear in the static. That's what hearing aids do. Okay, so that's another reason when I think of those super young children, they don't have that skill set, they don't have that previous background. So that's why you have your audiologists, your hearing therapists, hearing teachers, which is what I did at Real Life, speech therapists maybe, they work with you. It should be a gradual process so that that child doesn't go home and just trash those hearing aids on the kitchen floor. I'm so sorry, I made you wait.
I was just going to say that the way you described getting new hearing aids reminded me of when I get a new glasses prescription.
Yes.
Because it's like all of a sudden, like, wow, like I can see
It's
all the leaves on
clear.
the trees. Like,
Yes. That's so, and I've also experienced that too with wearing the glasses. Yes, I don't know if you can hear it over there, but wearing, getting a new prescription, getting the new glasses, and you realize just maybe how poor the previous glasses might have been, or how much, you know, how much more support you needed. That's what describing the new hearing aids reminded her of. So, yeah, thank you. I'll remember that for the next time I get the talk. Any other questions, comments? No? Well, thank you guys so much for coming, for choosing me over the exorcist. And yeah, thank you. My email is up there. Even though I'm online, even though I'm teaching online, I'm available. I can meet in person. I do have a face shield that I might end up wearing instead of like the covering. Yeah, and feel free if you're interested. I know this is through Breaking Barriers, but if you're interested in student study levels, if you're interested in student council for exceptional children, if you're interested in learning more about this topic or some of the other ones that I threw out there, please feel free to see me in person, email me, virtually meet with me, whatever. I appreciate that you guys came and spend the last 90 minutes. I have to ask though, this is like the exit trip question. Was the research stuffy? Was the research stuffy or was it interesting? Oh, somewhat? Okay, I gotta up the game there. So, I'm hoping, I was really hoping that I would say it was vibrant. It was vivid. No, hang on, I'm coming. It was colorful. Because it's not black and white. It's not the Oreo cookie. Okay? And I just, you know, in the findings, even if you encounter somebody who knows how he or she views self and recognizes it might change, you know, looking at the secular society versus like in special ed or whatever, still be respectful of that because that person is still a person, right? But to have a more vibrant, lived, joyful, like integrated experience, all three of those need to be there. That self-determination, that fluidity, and that management and that resiliency to bounce back. So if nothing else, please remember that. And if it helps to think of the rainbow analogy, to remember those points, awesome. So we could use a little more color, a little more cheer in this world. Okay? Thank you so much, you guys.